What's up guys and welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're celebrating Israel Adesanya's title shot against Dricus Du Plessis by talking about the most undeserved title shots in UFC history, or like recent history, because I ain't going back to the fucking 90s, but in like the recent UFC era that I've fucking watched, this is what we're going over. We're going over the people that just didn't really deserve title shots. Obviously, they're not all on the same level. There's like different, there's a bit of a spectrum of like, did you deserve the title shot or not? There's like more deserving, less deserving, there's in the middle. So we've got 5 different tiers. You can see them on the screen, and yeah, we're going to get into it. So to start off, Israel Adesanya versus Dricus Du Plessis, the cause of this video. I'm going to go in undeserved. Now look, this could go higher. This could go in very undeserved, because it kind of is. But just for the sake of this video, and my explanation is, while I agree, it is undeserved. Israel Adesanya is coming off a loss and was not a defending champion. At least he was a champion at the time, so it's not like he was like a contender. Like, it's not like he was someone that never won the belt, that lost, and then just got another title shot immediately, like other people we're going to talk about. So he was a champion. That is something going for him. Again, I'm not defending it. I still think it was very undeserved. But, it's the biggest fight to make in the middleweight division right now. Very clearly, Israel Adesanya and Dricus Du Plessis. The beef there is crazy. It's going to sell pay-per-views. It's going to be a massive fight. And look, I know we all agree Strickland is more deserving, but Strickland, Du Plessis 2, or Izzy versus Dricus. Like, come on. Look, if you can only watch one, I don't know about you. I can probably go without seeing Strickland and Dricus run it back. I'd love to see it, but I could probably go without watching it back. But I need to see Izzy and Dricus. I need to see what that build-up looks like. I need to see them in the cage. So I think this is the bigger fight. And again, look, not saying that it being the bigger fight justifies it, but Izzy's a star. He's a champion. So yes, it is undeserved. But there is some merit for it in the fact that it is the biggest fight to make a middleweight right now. It's a fight that people do want to see. And it's the fight that, like, a year ago we were all calling, just under a year ago, we were all calling for it. We all said we want to see it. And just because Izzy did lose to Strickland, now apparently everyone immediately doesn't want to see it. Like, you're lying to yourself if you say you don't want to see this fight. But let's move on to another fight. Next up on the tier list, I'm going to go with Jiri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira 2. The title fight that's coming up next weekend. I'm going to put it in situational, because look, I'm not saying this is undeserved. This is not an undeserved title shot, but it's like a title fight that's come about as a way. I might change this later on, because it doesn't really make sense with like, I put the situational tier as like it isn't really deserved, but it's only kind of happening because of like a guy getting called up on short notice. So this isn't really that, because both of them are getting called up on short notice. But I don't know, it's a bit situational, I guess. Look, I like Jiri, but for most guys, are we ever calling for title shots after one win? Look, I get it, the way the first fight ended definitely calls for a rematch, and I'm not saying I don't want to see the rematch. I love this fight. I would much prefer to see this than Ankalaev, but merit-wise, Jiri beat Rakic. He's beat one fighter after losing. Look, I'm not saying it's undeserved, but it is like a bit of a situational title shot. Like, we don't really want to give Ankalaev a title shot. You're the only other guy that kind of that deserves it, so we'll give it to you. Again, not saying I don't like the fight. I love the fight, but you got to say it's a little bit undeserved. Let's move on, though, to another fight. Next up on the tier list, we've got Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. I'm going to go with very undeserved. And I think we love DP. The fight turned out great. But this is not looking at how the fight turned out. If the undeserving challenger, obviously not in this case, but like, if the undeserving challenger wins, I don't know what the fuck that was. We'll edit that out. But, or maybe not, I don't know. But if the undeserving challenger wins, the title shot can still be undeserving. This is not looking at like, oh, the fight was great, it was a great scrap. Doesn't matter. It was still undeserving. Poirier was coming off one win over BSD, who was ranked number 12 or some shit like that. Good win. Didn't look amazing. Like, his grappling looked kind of shit, and that's why he was such a big underdog. Like, if he'd stuffed all of BSD's takedowns and just whooped him on the feet straight from the get-go, KO'd him in round 1, and just didn't get taken down at all, probably wouldn't have been a minus 600. But the fact that he got taken down, we're all kind of like, yeah, he doesn't look that good. And there was 2 lightweight fights booked. There was Arman versus Charles, and there was Gaethje versus Holloway, and then neither of those guys get a title shot. This could go in situational as well, because it does kind of fit the bill, but kind of an undeserving title shot for DP. I love him. Great fighter. And the fight ended up being great. But before, like, going into it, we all kind of agreed it was undeserving. And also, like, the way they set it up was just, again, probably could go in situational, but the way they set it up, why could you not have just waited waited a month and just done Arman or some shit, or just fucking, I don't know, if you really need to have that fight in, Abu Dhabi or whatever or some shit, just book a fucking Abu Dhabi card, or just push that card back. I don't know, could have done something else. DP didn't really deserve it, but still, fight turned out good, so who cares? Let's move on, though, to another fight. Next up on the tier list, we've got O'Malley versus Aljo. I'm going to put this in iffy. And it's not really iffy because, like, O'Malley was completely undeserving. Like, he was coming off the Peter Yan win. A lot of people dispute that. I think it was a very close fight. But he was coming off one win. He had one ranked win, and he got a title shot. And that's kind of why it was a bit iffy, because, like, people were kind of thinking the Yan fight was a robbery, so, like, maybe you just do one more. Like, we could have, because they had Cejudo versus Aljo. They did that because apparently originally O'Malley didn't want to take the fight. He wanted Aljo to fight Cejudo first. But, like, in the if you're going to do that fight, why couldn't O'Malley have taken another fight? Like, he kind of should have, to be honest. Like, how many people do you see win one fight in the top 15 and then just get a title shot straight away? I know the Yan win was good, but, like, it was a bit undeserved. But still, whatever, he's the fucking champ now, so fair play. Let's move on, though, to another fight. Next up on the tier list, we've got Usman versus Masvidal, the rematch. This was where Usman foot-stomped his way to a dominant decision, and then, without winning another fight, and while never being a UFC champion, Jorge Masvidal managed to talk his way, when he didn't even deserve the first title shot, arguably, but he managed to talk his way into an immediate rematch. Obviously, Usman fought Burns in the meantime, but then Masvidal sat out, waited, didn't fight from UFC 251 to all the way to UFC 261 where the rematch happened, didn't win a fight. He was coming off a loss to Usman and they ran it back. And no, this was not a dominant champion getting an immediate rematch. This was a challenger who got 50-45. I think he got 49-46. I think that was the scorecard. But a dominant loss, a clear loss, and then he talked his way into a rematch because it was on short notice, and he just kept yapping. So moral of the story, just keep yapping and you'll find your way in a title shot, because Masvidal just yapped and said, like, this is the goo from Miami, dude. That was 6 days. Give me 6 weeks, man. I'll break more bones than last time. Word? That was my Masvidal impression. But I don't know, not my best one. But yeah, he just yapped and got himself into a fucking title shot. Don't know how, but he did. So fair enough. Good. I don't hate the player, but I hate the game, because Masvidal did nothing wrong. That he didn't force the UFC to give him a title shot. The UFC makes the decision at the end of the day. But yeah, I don't know, it's undeserved. No one really gave it. Like, it was cool because, like, it was a big fight. Masvidal was still a star at the time. And it was the first fight back in a crowd, so it was cool. But we all kind of knew it was like, yeah, this motherfucker does not deserve it at all. But let's move on to another fight. Next up on the list, Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill. I'll go in situational because, yeah, this was undeserved. Jamal Hill was ranked number 7, coming off a kind of shitty TKO win over Thiago Santos, who after that fight left the promotion. And then he ends up getting a title shot with Glover Teixeira, former champion in Brazil. Undeserving, but situational. Obviously, it's not like they booked that willing and ready, like, yeah, this is the fight we want to do. Number 7 ranked Jamal Hill. Jamal was booked to fight Anthony Smith at the time, and then obviously that fight, he got pulled from that fight. So yeah, undeserved, but situational, so it was kind of reasonable. Let's move on, though, to another fight. Alright, we're going to power through some of these ones. Oliveira versus Chandler. Iffy. Very iffy. Chandler coming off the win over Dan Hooker, that win only. Oliveira definitely deserved it, but it was kids Khabib retired, they needed someone. They were going to do Poirier, but then he chose to take the Conor trilogy instead. Fair play to him. So yeah, a little bit iffy. Let's move on, though, to another one. Next up on the list, we've got Colby versus Leon. Extremely undeserving. I'm not going to go most undeserving, because at least Colby was coming off a win over just a goof from Miami, dude, Jorge Masvidal. So he was coming off a win, but he was out for fucking like a year and a half, over a year and a half, waiting as a backup, and then apparently that means you get a title shot. Ask Gamrot. That hasn't worked out for that motherfucker so far. So yeah, very undeserved. We all agree Colby did not deserve it, and guess what? This was not one of the examples where the undeserving title fight ended up being actually a banger or a really good scrap, or the undeserving challenger won. No, Colby showed up and fucking took a shit on the back of a bus, and he just laid a fucking egg in the octagon and did nothing. Let's move on though to another fight. Next up on the list, Sonnen versus Jones. Now obviously this was undeserving because Jon Jones did not deserve to actually be called the champion against Chael Sonnen. Obviously Chael we knew was a champion. Jon Jones just didn't even deserve to fight Chael. He didn't have that honor. He didn't have that legacy. So very undeserving. Nah, jokes aside though, Chael was not. Was he coming off a win? If not, he never won at light heavyweight. They just chucked him up a light heavyweight and did that fight, and it ended up accordingly because, obviously it ended up accordingly. Chael smoked him, we all know. Let's move on, though, to another fight. Next up on the list, Michael Bisping versus GSP. I'm not impressed by your performance. GSP was kind of undeserving of this fight, let's be honest. Now, this was not just because, GSP was undeserving, but this was because there was a clear fucking challenger. Whittaker deserved the title shot. We all knew it, and that's the reason why he just got given the fucking belt afterwards. When GSP won and then when GSP won and then just dipped, Whittaker just became the undisputed champ. So yeah, we knew Whittaker was the rightful challenger. Didn't get the shot. GSP came back after fucking 3 years, coming off a arguable robbery decision against Johnny Hendricks. Close fight, and then comes back up a weight class that he's never fought in and just gets a title shot straight away when there was another clear contender. Very iffy. Let's move on though to another fight. Next up on the list, we've got Pantoja versus Erceg. Now, situational. And again, don't come at me and say Erceg won the fight. I kind of agree with you, but it doesn't have anything to do with anything. The fact is, Erceg was ranked number 10, coming off a win over Matt Schnell, and that was his only ranked win. And yeah, that's why it's situational. I'm not going to put this in most undeserving, because, yeah, this fight doesn't get made in a normal circumstance. If they had, Pereira versus Hill on the card and they just didn't really, they would have done someone else. They would have found someone else. Or if this was, they had more notice. Yeah, Royval couldn't make they weren't really going to do Royval. Moreno was coming off a loss. El Bazi was injured. Makayev had a boring performance. Very situational title fight. So yeah, I'm not going to hate on it too much. And hey, it turned out to be a good scrap. But let's move on to another fight. Next up, Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane. This is going to go in undeserved because Gane was coming off a fucking win over Tai Tuivasa. Yeah, it was coming off a fucking back of the head TKO, standing 79 punch fucking elbow back of the head TKO against Tai Tuivasa. And he gets a title shot against Jon Jones. Pretty much just because they had no one else. But they did, because they should have fucking done Pavlovich. Pavlovich arguably deserved it, because he smoked Tai in a minute. I guess it was after Gane did it, but he also smoked Lewis in a minute. Both of Gane's fat heavyweight TKO wins, notable fat heavyweight TKO wins, Tai and Lewis were both third round back of the head shot TKOs, with his Pavlovich smoked them both in a minute. So yeah, he arguably deserved it. Yeah, undeserving for Ciryl Gane. But let's move on. It was pretty much just because they wanted a somewhat bigger name, and they wanted Gane, who went to a decision within Gane, to be able to be like, oh, look at this, Jones finished this guy. That was pretty clearly what it was. Let's move on, though, to another fight. Next up on the list, we've got Islam versus Oliveira. I guess you could put both, to be honest, because when Islam challenged for the belt, it was kind of iffy. He was coming off a win over Bobby Green. I'm not going to say it was a terrible title. It wasn't undeserved, but it was iffy, and it was they wanted a main event for Abu Dhabi. And then when Oliveira got his rematch, obviously, fight didn't end up happening, but was a little bit undeserving. Look, we agreed that Charles had a great win against Beneil, but I don't know. Actually, I'm not going to say that was really undeserving, but Gaethje had just got a head kick over Poirier, and hadn't fought for the belt. And obviously Oliveira did kind of get smoked by Islam the first time. So the rematch, it's do you go with Oliveira, who is coming off a really good win but also got smoked by Islam, or do you go with Gaethje, who, even though he's not as hard of a matchup for Islam, hasn't fought him already and is coming off a head kick KO? I think Gaethje was the more deserving challenger at the time, but hey, it is what it is. Obviously, fight didn't end up happening. So yeah, I'm more talking about the first one, but you could also kind of chuck the second one in there too. Let's move on though to another fight. Next up on the list, Izzy versus Romero. Selson, bye. This was undeserved. Romero was coming off loss or losses. Was it plural? I forget. But he was coming off at least a loss to Paulo Costa. I think it was 2, wasn't it? Because it was the Whittaker one and then the Costa one, unless I'm retarded and there was one. There was one in between. I don't know, whatever. But he was coming off the loss to Costa. I know that. I forgot what the circumstances was why Costa couldn't fight. I forget. Don't call me a casual. Just let me know in the comments what the reason was why Costa couldn't fight him. But Izzy wanted to fight Romero. He's like, this guy's scary. I want to fight him. And I'm going to crumble him like the Twin Towers. Botched. I'm gonna touch him. I'm gonna touch him up like I touch my dog. Trust. So yeah, that's what Izzy wanted. He just wanted to have Romero on his resume. Fair enough, fair play to Izzy, but obviously the fight turned out the way it did and not the best. He did not, in fact, crumble him like the Twin Towers. Boshed. Let's move on though to another fight. I love just doing the Izzy boshed impression. It's very fun. It's very easy to do as well. Most of the other ones I fucking mess up. I butcher them, but I butcher them like a dog. Bosh. Why did I say a dog? I was going to say a pig and then I said a dog because I was thinking of what Izzy would say, but whatever, let's fucking move on. Next up on the tiers, we've got O'Malley versus Chito Vera, a recent entry at 299. Obviously, Chito Vera, the basis for this rematch was the fact that Chito won the first one. It was fluky. It was not really a definitive win. But he was coming off, a high-level win over Pedro Munoz after literally losing to Corey Sandhagen and getting dominated by him. Obviously, Corey was injured, fair enough, but they literally made Merab fight Cejudo the card before that, so it's not like Merab was injured. He could have fought. But yeah, they wanted to have like a bigger kind of name value, I guess. It was very undeserved. One win against Pedro Munoz by decision. Very, very good way to get a title shot after coming off a loss. But let's move on to another fight. Next up on the list, we've got Dan Henderson. I said Han Denderson almost. We've got Dan Henderson versus Michael Bisping 2 when the 47-year-old got a win over fucking Hector Lombard, I'm pretty sure, and then ends up getting a title shot. Again, instead of Whitaker, instead of Romero, instead of any of these guys, he fights fucking a 50-year-old retired skateboarder. That's who he fought, and he fucking went life and death with the man. But let's move on to another fight. Next up on the list, we've got Islam versus Volk, the rematch. Again, situational, not like an undeserving fight, because there was basis for the rematch regardless, but it was like it was bit of a weird like circumstance to get a title shot. Again, if they booked this on a full camp, it probably actually wouldn't have been that bad, but it was just like a title shot that kind of got just chucked in and given to everyone just because. And obviously, it wasn't like this fight. I wouldn't have had an issue with this fight if it was on a full camp, but because then it was like, oh yeah, fair. They had a fucking great fight first time, one of the fights of the year, and then Volk gets a win. So yeah, I don't know, it's just an entry on the list because I wanted to even it out because, my brain requires everything to be fucking... I need to have even numbers in all of the tiers, otherwise it pisses me off. Let's move on though to another tier, or another fight. Next up on the list, we've got Jones versus Stipe. Now this fight has not happened yet, but it's on the books, and we can all agree it is one of the most undeserving title fights in UFC history. Because look, if Tom Aspinall did not exist, if he disappeared, just like Pantoja's dad, if you know, if you watched my other video, but... yeah, if he was gone, if he was out of the picture, and there was Pavlovich coming off a loss to someone else who wasn't the current interim champion, and then like Gane was not deserving, and then I wouldn't hate it. But the fact that there's a fucking clear number one contender, interim champion, beating all the best guys, and Jones is fighting a fucking 40-year-old number 11 ranked real estate agent. That's who he's fighting, a fucking part-time firefighter, or full-time firefighter, part-time fighter, to be honest. Yeah, undeserving as fuck for Stipe. I like Stipe too. Respect to the man. He's got a great legacy, but you're coming off a fucking KO loss, bro. And you didn't have that many defenses in that previous reign, and it's not like it's immediate. If they had run back, if they'd done Stipe and Ngannou 3, then fair enough. I actually probably wouldn't have hated it. It would have been a bit iffy, but it wouldn't have been awful. But because obviously Stipe won the first and Ngannou won the second, do the trilogy. But the fact that they're waiting for fucking a whole decade to have him fight again after he's coming off a loss and there's a number one contender, terrible. Let's move on though. Next up on the list, we've got McGregor versus Alvarez. It was undeserved. We all kind of know it, but no one really cares. I'll just chuck it in there. Conor was coming off one win over after the loss to Diaz, then beat him in the rematch by decision. And yeah, we all agreed now that champions should have to defend their belt at least 3 times before moving up. Conor didn't defend the featherweight belt, he just dipped. I know, it was star power, fair enough. Let's move on though to the last entry. Okay, so now I'm swapping this around and I'm going to put Pereira versus Yuri in iffy, and I'm going to put Strickland versus Izzy in situational, because Strickland versus Izzy was situational, so I had to take one from this tier, swap it into that tier, and yeah, Pereira versus Yuri, because it was booked, so it's not like it's a short notice fight that was undeserving, but a guy got an opportunity on short notice. This fight was going to get made regardless, so yeah, I think it is still a little bit iffy, but I don't hate it. But yeah, that's the tier list done, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that. yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Go watch my fucking predictions, man. I did a 53-minute video on that fuckhead, got no views. It's at like 1.6k views, bro. I put effort into that shit, man. Get no views, bro. Depressing. Nah, peace out though, guys. Follow my Instagram, yeah, all that. Bye.